Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. Here we have the second session of the Marauder B-26 148 scale from ICM. So I obviously did the stream yesterday. I haven't done anything to the kit since last night. You see, that is still where I left it. That was the last thing that I got onto before. Couldn't do any more. And the only thing I've changed is that I do have, so I can show you here, my lighting rig made out of this aluminium channel stuff. So that should give better lighting. I think hopefully you can see already it's better in terms of the close-up cam, we call it that. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a very pleasant 23 degrees here in the south of the UK. Unfortunately, no northern lights last night. The first part of the video stream, whatever you want to call it, actually was too long for YouTube. I can't edit it, so I can't edit out the piece at the beginning, which it just changes things for ads and stuff. So I will probably actually take that down and re-upload it as a video, and I may do that with all of these and cut out all of the, all of the breaks and like the stuff. I do have my little coffee. I've also got a pint of lemonade here because I think fluids, given the warmth of today, are probably the most important thing. Toilet breaks, I'm actually pretty good. I was a sales rep for a number of years, so I learned to live without toilet breaks for like 3 or 4 hours at a time without any issues. What I have done is I've actually broken this session up into 3 separate ones because one, I think StreamYard will struggle under a 10-hour stream. And it also just makes it easier, So once I have a break, I'll probably put up the new stream, actually. So I'll probably break, come out of that stream entirely, put up the new one with a be right back thing, and then when I come back, I'll start the new stream. So there'll be 3 separate streams. It's the way StreamYard does it, and the way that YouTube does it as well. And that'll make it easier to pop in, But just do be aware, if you want to pop in now and watch a little bit and then pop in later on, like 9 o'clock or something at night, it'll be a completely different link, different stream. Those are all up on YouTube now, so it shouldn't be an issue for finding those. But that's where we're at. So I've got a few more bits of equipment that I brought up. So I've got some more of these handy little crocodile clips on long little metal things. These are actually pretty useful. I sell a version of these actually in the shop which have, rather than the teeth here of these ones, which are very cheap, and they have like a plastic cover over them so it doesn't like risk injuring your plastic. Although even with ICM plastic, they get marked by these. And it comes with a little base that you can put them in, which is pretty useful. To be honest, I use, not here, but again, that aluminium V channel, just with some wood on top, some foam in between that I stick these in when I'm doing big batch spraying. But I got some of those because obviously holding items like I can show them here, can't I? This is the turret seat. I can't do with my hands while I'm spraying. And of course I do have now the airbrush. So this is actually the Galeri. I don't know what it's called, the Mobius. This is a 0.3. I found this is a really nice brush. So I'm going to be using that for the entirety of that. I've got my little compressor. It's quite a quiet one, so it shouldn't interfere with any of the stuff even when it comes on. You might be able to see, if I can get out of the way, Pablo is joining us. There's Pablo on the bed with his blanket, like a little prince. He loves the sun. He's been out sunbathing this morning. because he's African. So for those of you who don't know, Pablo, and this is the pre-modeling ramble that I usually have. Pablo is a hairless Chinese crested, which aren't actually Chinese. They are African in origin. If you think of the statues of Anubis, with that very kind of right-angled and then long snout with the great big ears, quite jackal-like in the kind of structure of the skull. He only has hair on his head, like as the crest, as they're called. Ours is very hairless, so normally they have a lot more than that. They also have it on their paws, called socks, and the tail. He doesn't really have much of that. His tail's like an elephant's tail. It's got a little bit of scraggly hair. But of course, being African, they can take as much heat as you can possibly give them. So he will go absolutely black in the sun. So his skin produces massive amounts of melanin in response to the sun, to the point where he almost goes completely black. Whereas at the moment he's sort of a bit brown, and underneath his clothes he's sort of more mottled skin colour. But anyway, he's joining us, so if there's any barking or anything at any point, that's what it is. Not me. Okay, so move this lamp, kind of cleared out some of the intervening detritus, but otherwise, let's put the keyboard down here. And I think the first thing to do, let's put this camera down so you get a better overview. So I hope you can see from that you get a better view now with the better lighting of firstly the setup I have, and you get a bit of an overview of what I'm doing, and then obviously the close-up view. So you should be able to see whichever view we're looking at. I think the first thing to do is kind of sort out what I did last night at the end. So obviously we have, sorry, I've got background music on, but it is a little bit loud for me. There we go. So yeah, we obviously have to spray all of these pieces. I did want to get these pieces done before actually coming to those this morning. I'm not sure if that's actually, well, obviously it didn't happen, but I need to do that now. So these pieces we can put all to one side, I feel, with all of that stuff over there. Got a little bit crowded here at the moment, not exactly ideal. But as I said, I am in a kind of non-ideal space at the moment. I just want to collect stuff together in kind of what it's going to be sprayed. So all of these, obviously, the machine guns are all going to be sprayed black. And then I will make them an appropriate metallic with, as I mentioned before, powdered graphite. There's another machine gun. These pieces, I think, are interior green. We'll detail paint as we need. Good. All the bombs, obviously, will be different again. Okay. I think we're just about there. So let me lastly just go to the comments here. We've got V-Strom, we've got Dorkosaurus, we've got Julian, David Markey, Brian. We've got Julian, Pavel, Hobby Time, Jim Altergott, that's better. John Christmas, Steve T. Welcome, everybody. Right, let's crack on. Obviously, that's our fuselage from yesterday. So that's nicely dried. Decent fit. Obviously, when we've got the bulkheads in, that'll align much better as well, be easier to get that all together. I do have pieces here for one Bombay door. I need to put all of those pieces on this half as well. But I'll do that after all of these. That's our central Bombay piece. A lot of interior green to spray. A lot of interior green before we then get on with detail painting and get all these little bits everywhere. Need my sprue glue pot to check them all in. Yeah, it's difficult when you're going down, Julian, to pick out everybody individually and remember what you've just said. Taggers has joined us as well. Good evening, Taggers. Having a poolside cider, very nice. I shall move on to beer in the last session today. Any time before that, I feel, would be foolish. Right. Now that's our second in this cell. I don't want to do that yet. I want to try and get this one together, and then we'll go from there. So I need part D23. Yep. So I need to find my D. These are on the engine piece. Yeah, we go D23. Also got D53 and D5. This is D5. That's D5. D53. That's the 53. So the 53 goes on this one. That was 53. Get it right, Alex. So these are quite nice, these little inserts that have all of the correct, angled pieces in. Although that one actually got twisted. It's probably me just being clumsy with the sprues. So although it is 23 degrees today, it does feel warmer. I mean, we live in a thatched cottage, so it does tend to retain the heat. Although it does kind of keep quite cool when it's really hot and quite warm when it's really cold. But I am up in the spare bedroom, which does tend to get warmer than the rest of the house. Fight Magnet, welcome. So these do have, I a little curve on them. Put them into the angle here correctly. They do have a need to be trimmed, which is one of the things actually with modern kits, is because the tolerances are so good now, because everything is designed by CAD, you do need to make sure, because even, you know, a fraction of a millimeter, you know, this tab here where I've cut that, that is maybe what, 0.2, 0.3 of a millimeter thick where I've cut it. That will be enough to throw you off. I throw the fit of the part off. Yeah, that first one is. And it's amazing, really, what your eyes can spot, distinguish, see. Of course, I'm using glasses here because my eyes aren't quite as good as they used to be without the aid of near field correction. Okay, let's put these in. Fits without any issue. Same here, though, I've quite trimmed that one down enough. And of course, manufacturers do make allowances. They don't just go down to the, you know, the CAD scale. But those tolerances are much tighter than previously. And engineering can reproduce that as well, right? So if you take ICM as a company, for example, they design everything in CAD. The molds are produced by CNC machining directly from that CAD. So the precision that they can get is obviously an order of magnitude better than if you were using, you know, traditional methods and you know, effectively carving it out of a piece of steel, which is how it used to be done. Interesting. One language all programmers are fluent in is profanity. Watching YouTube yesterday, he said, I definitely recommend swearing a lot, which you have to try to not swear on a live stream. Not that much, really. You know, generally, I try to reserve profanity for those cases when it is required. Right? The whole point of swearing is to emphasize something, or, you know, to exclaim. And if you use it all the time, of course, it loses that. You know, people who use you know, the F word, or Sing this and sing that, it kind of just loses any impact. So it's like, you know, as with all language, the meaning becomes lost if you are not using it in context. There are things that make me swear, a lot, but they tend to be, well, things like my ex with my divorce. You know, the state of ridiculousness in some areas of politics, rather than, you know, models. I will swear if I lose a piece or do something stupid, generally on a live stream, you know, I reserve it for those moments when I feel it's warranted. So it tends to be, you know, at relatively, you know, low levels, you know. It tends to be just to emphasize a point that, you know, something is rubbish. So one of the examples I would give is Hornby's business policies. You know, I've said before that I think they are generally shit. Having been in a different field, but still, you know, in distribution businesses and business as a whole, these things, the rules of these things don't change a huge amount just because you're selling model kits compared to, you know, medical equipment, for instance. Still, what makes business sense, right? It's still about customer relationships. It's about profitability, direction, vision, all of those things, which I have spoken about on streams and videos like the IPMS one that I did recently. And almost ended up spilling some extra thin over there. And thank you to everybody who commented on the IPMS video. That's some really good feedback. It's really interesting. Okay, anecdotes. Yes, they are anecdotes. They are, you know, individual stories, but, you know, enough of those together constitutes data. Each of those is a data point. You know, any anecdotal story is a data point. And, you know, anecdotes are based in some form of truth, some form of reality. And I think it is a foolish company that ignores them. And by company, you know, any organization. It doesn't have to be an actual company. Okay, so just looking at this, I don't think I need to do anything more on the inside here. These are pretty much self-contained. Now these nacelles are actually nice little units. I say little, I mean they're not that little. And obviously the B-26 was powered by double wasps, which were huge, incredibly powerful engines. I think it was double wasps, wasn't it? Where are those tweezers? Oh, there we go. Flak magnet. I can't get my teeth in today. Flak magnet is doing an I-16. Is that the 1/32nd scale? I think it is. I think it's 1/32nd scale, right? For the I-16, because it's only the latter. Only a little thing. I think it's like the was it the Gladiator that they do as well? But yeah, I mean, I've only been impressed with the modern tooled ICM. And I say the modern tooled because, as you will have heard from Valeria herself, if you saw the interview I did with her, you know, the company kind of restarted in the early noughties. So there was some stuff before there, and there are some kits that are not theirs. As one of my channel members, who may or may not wish to be named, found out. Some of their 1/72 scale vehicles actually come from a defunct Ukrainian company, and I don't think they represent, well, they don't represent ICM's current standards. I was surprised because I didn't realize that ICM had those kits. You know, they took on those tools, and there are some of their, you know, their older toolings. So anything pre-2000, I would regard with a little bit of skepticism from ICM, because I don't think it's not the ICM of today. It's a bit like judging Airfix on its old 80s kits. You know, it's like, well, that represents a different company, you know, from a different time, using different methods. You know, they didn't use CAD then, they didn't use CNC machining. I should have really bought some clamps, because otherwise I'm going to be doing a lot of holding things together with my fingers. But hey, see, so these are actually quite nice little, I keep saying little, but you know, they are quite chunky, but they're nice assemblies. You know, I like the way that all of this is represented, you know, the different levels as it was in the actual thing. That together with, let's see if I've got the right one. Well, look at that, I have the right side. Together with that gives you the interior of that bay, which again, I will probably glue this like this before I spray it, just to make that much easier. And it's interesting, because I used to live with a house share when I was a student, or at least on my industrial year as a student, with some teachers, one of whom was German, and she had some German friends. That was my first kind of exposure to German people and culture firsthand, rather than from my German lessons in O-level, or pre-O level. And yes, most of what I got out of that is how to say some very dubious things in German. I think it's one thing culturally that we all share, right, is the ability to swear. It's very part of the human condition. Any news on when you and Moss? So those of you who were waiting for that, so Moss went through a month or more of a pretty rough time of things. So and if you follow Moss's channel, you'll have noticed he didn't post anything for quite some time there, but he's getting back into it now. So it will be a matter of time for us to actually just organise, you know, when to actually, because obviously both of our schedules have obviously changed a little bit from then as well, because we often used to record on a Wednesday, and I've got the what do you call it, midweek model meet on a Wednesday. So whether I do that kind of every other week and then we record Beyond the Box, I don't know whether that will work for him. So we've just got to work it out, basically, is what I'm trying to say in a very long roundabout way. But yeah, we both had, for slightly different reasons, a bit of a rough time at the beginning of the year. You know, I mentioned still trying to get my divorce finalised, which is not proving to be easy. So yeah, Unfortunately, it's all real life stuff getting in the way of what we'd like to do all the time. Because it'd be great if we could just forget all of those things and just do all of our videos and podcasts and everything else each week. But realistically, it's quite a big commitment, and obviously when you've got two different people organizing or trying to organize something like that is the sum of those two. So it will happen. It's just a matter of us trying to work it out. Oh, the I-16 is in 148, is it? Okay. Oh my God, these puns. These are terrible. So yes, taggers, I do have the ICM paints on the website now. They do have a pretty big range. So obviously I'm just stocking the sets at the moment. And if they are successful, people like them, buy them, get a feel for them. I actually sold the first set before I even had them on the website. There was a chap came into the shop who bought a bunch of stuff, getting back into the hobby, mainly in figure painting, was looking for different paints. Bought some enamels, bought one of the ICM sets, the civilian set. Obviously still has his oils and things. So I found them to be really good for brush painting. So, and I'll be using ICM paints on some of the stuff that you'll see over the next few sessions. Right, let's get this other nacelle. And this is another frame down. There's 3 complete frames we have got through now, which is quite good. So it was that one. That one. And the main fuselage well. So 3 frames down. That's frames A, B, and C are all done with. We did get through quite a lot of G yesterday as well. So G is what I refer to as the fiddly bits. And see on the big cam, there's still quite a lot here, but we did get through a lot as well. Actually, more than it looks like we have. I'll move my other D sprue, so 2 D sprues, obviously, for D23. And also, this is D5. So 5 is the one underneath the camera. 53. Put off to the side. I generally try to distinguish between parts which, pretty much look identical. I'll either not take them off the sprue at the same time. That's generally what I do. So I'd fix this one before I took this one off. If I am taking them off for, stream or something like this, then I'll physically, put them apart. So 53 I'll put over there. And then I know I'm not going to mix them up. So just getting rid of all of these little tab joiner pieces, injection points. as I mentioned yesterday, I tend to use a scalpel for all of this stuff. It's all going to be pretty much invisible, even for visible ones like this, you know, provided you don't go overboard on seams and things. Generally, you're going to have to smooth it down anyway, so don't worry too much. It's just a matter of care. Right, so that one. A little bit of light flash on that. Just a smidge. Right, so 5 underneath the camera. Where is the other nacelle? Here it is. So this one is the one with 5 on it. So let's trim that down and get that in, and I won't be worrying about remembering that this one is number 5. I must say it is much easier with good light. Yesterday I could barely see what I was doing for about 70% of the time. I don't know whether that came across in the stream, but it was hard. The light setup was not ideal. Hi Mario, good to see you. The only thing I find with the specialized color sets is sometimes ICM's color choices are not what I would have particularly done for that set. So one of the things I'm doing, one of the things I will show in the video, in fact, I think I might have them here because my scanner is down here. Yep. There with me. Also, just as an aside, I do have the Dragon 2024 catalogue. I did wonder about doing a video on it, but it's not got a huge amount of new stuff out this year. It did come out a while after it's Chinese, so obviously it came out after the Chinese New Year. But it is getting on quite a bit now. So let me know if you'd like to see anything there, or whether it's too late for that. So this, as some of you will know, something that I do for all of my paints. So just to give you an example, and again, the scientist in me, you know, if you look at the coverage, so this is, those of you who don't know, I think I've got a blank one. These are little bases that I have made. They're, I think, 12mm by 75, I think, something like that. I can't remember. But basically, 12mm. I have a label printer which does a 12mm label, which means I can label it, and also Tamiya painted. Tamiya masking tape is 6mm, so I can mask this off. But basically, I mask off. So I spray all of them white. Then I mask off the white, spray it grey, mask off the grey, spray it black. So I end up with these stripy little chits, let's call them. And then I can paint over the 3 colours, and then mask off, or just do it by eye. I've tended to do it by eye recently. Second layer when that's dry, so that shows me the covering power of the paint, and also I can scan them, put them into a format which allows me to calculate colour difference between them, so I can look at equivalent colours or what to use as shade and light and all these kinds of things. But it also shows you, I mentioned covering power, You can see here, this is, and don't worry about the colors, this is not as orange as it looks on the camera. Camera sensors, red is one of the things that camera sensors are different in sensitivity to our eye. So you generally don't see reds in cameras as they actually are, unless you go to like more expensive sensors that are in, you know, more expensive cameras or electronics. But you can see this is the aqua color from Revell. You can see one coat, two coats, and the kind of coverage you're getting. This is ICM's blood red, and you can see the coverage is just better. So the pigment density in ICM paints is pretty good. Look at that rubber black. One coat, basically, there's almost no difference between the white, grey. Sorry, that is going out of focus. Apologies for that. Come on, focus. Come on, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Almost no difference between the white, grey, and black and one or two coats. So I find this is really useful for when I'm choosing what colours to use or what effects. So for instance, if I wanted a yellow filter, something like the Chimera colours, which are, you know, a single pigment, all Chimera colours are single pigment colours. That's important if you want to mix stuff. But you can see it's very transparent. So if I want this as a filter over something, that's a really good choice. Same with the like phthalo green here. You can see it's quite transparent. So I'd use it as a filter. Whereas I wouldn't use the ICM colours as a filter because the pigment density is really high, not very transparent. This is a really nice, I really like this colour. It's called Off-White. I think they actually keep it as an entire word, but it's a really nice, as it says, Off-White. It's not quite, it's like the sort of stencil colour that you get from Vallejo for doing the interior of German tanks or something, for instance. It's not, if you see the Revell, this is Revell white, and you can see how cream that white is. So this is something I do for myself. But the point I was kind of going to come to is because I can scan all of those and then actually, you know, compare them paint to paint with color distance, you know, I can say, well, actually, if I'm going to be doing so I've got some rust on me there from the these are all magnetic on a metal sheet, so I can rearrange them and compare them with each other stuff. You know, I actually wouldn't use for instance, they use chocolate for their RAF brown, which is too dark. You know, so I wouldn't use that. I would use whatever, the deep brown or whatever. So that's the only thing I find with specialized paint sets is some of the color choices for those subjects are a little bit questionable, I'd say. The paint is good. I just think that choice is, you know, it wouldn't be what I would have chosen, if you like. It's a small grumble, but it's a good question. Went from Vallejo to Tamiya. Would I say ICM paints are better than Tamiya? No. I wouldn't say either are better than each other, and I wouldn't say they're better than Vallejo. They're different. So each of them offers different things. So Tamiya are much harder. They're not impossible to brush paint with, but because they are mostly alcohol rather than water, they are water soluble. But a Tamiya paint is about 70% alcohol, mainly butanol. So don't go drinking them, as they would do you no good. That's why they have flammable symbols on them. And why thinning them really requires Tamiya thinner and not like a general purpose acrylic thinner, which use detergents to solubilize their binders rather than alcohol. So I've been thinking about doing several videos on paint, because there's a lot of misconceptions about paint. So for instance, let me grab a couple of paints here just to demonstrate the point. If I can actually open this box. So here is an ICM Middlestone acrylic paint. Okay. Don't think I've got a Tamiya paint here. But so here we have a Humbrol acrylic, and here we have an Outlaw acrylic. These are all acrylic paints. If I had a Tamiya paint here as well, that would also be acrylic. Acrylic has nothing to do with the solvent that is carrying it. They all use binders to, funny enough, bind the pigment. And how you solubilize that depends on what your binders are and various other things. So the solvents in these are all different, right? And if we had a Tamiya, so if this was a Tamiya, for instance, it would be mainly alcohol. This is water and detergent, and these are lacquers. Yeah. So these are all acrylic paints, acrylic pigments, but they are not the same solvent. That is different from enamel paints, completely different from oil paints, completely different from watercolor paints. So there's a lot of people say, oh, Tamiya aren't acrylics, or because something's a lacquer, it's not acrylic. That's not the case. It's a lot more complex than that. I get what people mean. It's just not accurate. That's me being a pedant. I wouldn't call anybody out on that unless they were being pedantic themselves, in which case they deserve everything they get. So, in answering your question, Steve, Tamiya paints, because they have a higher alcohol content, tend to spray really well, because the alcohol lowers the surface tension, sprays much better. You can spray at lower PSIs, gives a nice, fine, even spray. But because they are mainly alcohol, they tend to dry more quickly. So if you're brush painting them, they can form a skin very quickly on the top, but not be fully dry underneath. So then when you go over them, they can pull that away. And you can use retarders and other things and stuff, but that's why people have problems painting, brush painting with Tamiya paints compared to something like this, which dries much more evenly through the paint. So once it's dry, it's dry. So you don't get that immediate skinning on top because it's water-based. So it evaporates, at a slower rate. And people often prefer, let's say water-based acrylics. They're not water-based acrylics, but water-based, that's what we understand, so I'll use it. Water-based acrylics, because they're easier to blend because they have that sort of extended drying time, slightly longer drying time. Still dry quite quickly, which is one of the benefits of acrylics, as well as them being non-toxic. You see, there's no, although they say for adult modelers only, because that's and often you'll see, actually you can see here, water-based acrylics for brush. And it also should say 40 to 60% diluting for airbrush. That's quite a lot, bearing in mind that these are quite thin paints, from that being able to paint directly from the pot. Oh, here we go. This is a Pro Acryl. This is a really good white. If you ever need a white, I've got all kinds of spray on it, but Pro Acryl, It's really pigment dense, really nice. But if you look at this, I'll just give it a shake. You'll hear from that. I have a ball in there. I always have little mixing balls in these. And these are reformatted from their original. But you see that? How thick that is? It's formed a little blob. Whereas if you look at this, you can kind of tell it's more liquid. Just from the way it's in the cap there. I can tell. I mean, you might not be able to tell from looking through a camera, but it is. Trust me. Trust me, I'm a doctor. As you see this, look how you can move it and actually, almost sculpt with it. So you really have to dilute it, but it's very pigment dense. It's really nice. So I have paints from all kinds of different manufacturers, and they're all used for different things. Some of them you can blend, some of them really don't mix together. And this is just all water-based acrylics, as we would call them. So there's lots of depth you can go in with paints. There's a lot of chemistry in there, whether or not you care to learn about it, but so the major upshot is there isn't a paint that is best, if you like. These very good for brush painting, nice for blending. So if you're doing figure painting, that's often a thing, or if you want to use them for effects, let's say, terrain painting and stuff like that. That white. See, I told you it's pigment dense. It's just from that little bit, just getting a tiny bit on me. These lacquers from Outlaw, they're extremely hard, extremely hardy. You spray with these, they dry basically instantly. You can mask on top of them straight away. The solvent doesn't hang around, so the solvent is very volatile in a lacquer. So which means it evaporates quickly. That's all it means. So these are the most volatile any lacquer paint, whether it's Tamiya, Outlaw, SMS, whoever. Very volatile carrier. So the carrier evaporates, leaving your pigment there. The very volatile solvents that are used in this actually kind of bind or slightly melt the plastic, so you get a very good adhesion of the paint to the plastic. Tamiya, obviously water soluble, but mostly alcohol. So again, they evaporate quicker than a standard water-based, which has a detergent in it with the binder. So they spray more easily because, again, lower surface tension, they evaporate more quickly, slightly harder to do blending and things with. So it really depends what you're using them for, what you're using them in, what effect you're trying to create, all of those things. And I've just got a big load of glue on the top there, which I didn't want to do. Okay, I shall now use a small profanity, a bugger. Wasn't paying attention, thinking of paint. Not the end of the world. We'll go over that with 1,000 or something. Let's get these little tab pieces off. The injection gates. When you say Vallejo, is it color, air, game? They're very different. Game series also for brush. Yeah, so well, I would take a slight different opinion to that one. Well, I think the air range is better for brush. it's about the right consistency for brush painting straight from the bottle, whereas game or color or any of the armor range, like the Panzer Aces range and stuff, really you need to thin. So it really depends what you are looking for from your paint. Do you want to mix it, for instance? Are you going to be doing blends? In which case, these kind of paints, whether they're Vallejo, AK, ICM, Citadel, are all garbage, right? Why are they garbage? Because they're not single pigment. So to create this, you know, there may be 3 or 4 different pigments in there to create this color. You don't know how those are going to react when you mix them with a green, say, or a brown. A different brown, you might mix them together and get more of a greenish color. And you think, where the hell does that come from? Because this one contains like green and the interactions between them. That's why I use the Chimera paints if I want to do that sort of blending, because they are single pigment, so you know exactly what is going to happen when you mix a green, or say a blue and a yellow, you're going to get a green. Which is why when you mix a lot of colors from manufacturers like Citadel and others, when you mix them together, you often end up with a brown, because if it contains, you know, red and blue as well, the other one contains yellow, it's going to end up as a brown. So it really does depend what you want to do. So all of those paints, color, air, game, the Panzer Aces, I find Vallejo paints pretty good. But I wouldn't use them in the same way that I would use Chimera or, you know, lacquer paints or even ICM paints, you know. So a lot of this is really about knowing your tools, and paint is just another tool, and what you want to do with it, you know. So the scalpel, you know, I use my scalpel for a huge amount of stuff in my modeling, right? It's not actually the best tool for doing a lot of stuff that I do with it. So for, like, you know, removing little pieces, you know, like these injection gates, it's not the best tool for that, because I can very easily overcut, you know, very easily when trimming this, go into the plastic. Much safer, and I get a much nicer result actually if I sanded it, if I use the sanding stick, but that would take forever. So it's a compromise, you know, and it's a compromise I'm happy with. So it really depends what, you know, for your style of modeling, you know, because this is all about you and your hobby. It's not about what anybody else, you know, wants to do or say. It's what works for you. So, you know, if the Vel you feel that the game series is the best for you on brush, that shouldn't be anything that I or anybody else should argue with. You know, because you're correct. It is, you know, the best paint for you for brush. You find it awesome. I can't say no, you don't, because you do. Do I find it awesome? It's okay. You know, it's a bit like bikes, you know, or cars. There is no one perfect car that everybody thinks is the best. People all have their different opinions. You know, whether it's they like I hate French cars generally. I don't like how soft the suspension tends to be in them, or the way they look generally. That doesn't mean I haven't found French cars that I do like. I just happen to prefer generally Japanese, German, you know, Audi, BMW. I'm not a great fan of Mercedes. I've owned Mercedes, and I actually really liked my okay. But a lot of these things are a matter of taste. There are things which are absolute. Paints aren't one of them. You know, in life, there is such a huge range. There is such a lot to do with them. They are all tools, and it's why I would never exclude, you know, a range. Citadel paints are okay. They have some which are absolutely awesome. They do have the worst Yeah, it is the worst. I was going to say Revell, actually, give them a run for the money, but they have the worst paint pot design in history, you know, for the user. I mean, it's great for them because things evaporate quickly, they don't close properly, they spill easily. They're great for them because you end up buying a lot more paint than you actually need because you end up ruining most of it. And it's also incredibly expensive, which is kind of what a lot of their business model is built on, is going to a market that doesn't really know about any of this stuff, usually teenagers, 12 upwards, and selling them stuff at really inflated prices. So, yeah, I'm not so keen on the smell of Tamiya paint. I think it's the butanol. I really like the smell of Vallejo paints. I think Vallejo paints smell great. But again, that doesn't mean I'm right. It just means for me, I prefer the smell of Vallejo paints, right? Gunsanyo's Mr. Color Paints. The main problem I have with them is availability. Even as a supplier, as a retailer, trying to get hold of Gunsanyo stuff on a reasonably regular basis is not easy. So I do like this stuff when you can get hold of it. And I think that is a big thing for people, because a lot of people like to use a range. I've made a bit of a mess of that, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get all of this done, last night, so that I could clean up stuff like this. And as I mentioned yesterday, I don't like to sand things that have been glued. I think maybe by tonight I could sand that, but it's not my preferred option. Better than my mistakes. Those have come together okay. Chemistry with Alex, absolutely. Why not? I do chemistry, biology, a little bit of physics. Yeah, I've heard generally good things, but I haven't really heard any negative things about ICM paints. Because the other thing is, these are 12 mils, right? So 12 mils is less than most of, not this, because the Procryl are a bit bigger anyway. But if you think of this sort of dropper bottle from Vallejo and stuff, they're generally 14 mils. Tamiya bottles, even though they look bigger, are 10 mils, so they're 2 mils less than this. The prices, so Tamiya and Vallejo are roughly the same price, right? So the Vallejo is better value. These 12 mils, a little bit less than Vallejo, but the price is, I think, like almost half. It's only 2/3, so you're getting much better value out of these. I also quite like the fact that they're smaller. I quite like it that Tamiya went to the 10 mil, even though I did love the old 23s, the 23 mil ones they did. And I hated it when they actually went to the 10 mils, but thinking about it, 23s, they did used to dry out, so as you use them, because it's alcohol, the alcohol does tend to evaporate more if you've got them open and mixing and stuff, and you're doing it all the time, and that changes the consistency of them, so they do change as you age them. Whereas the 10 mil ones, you're more likely to use it more quickly, so the paint will be more consistent. Of course, they took the opportunity to fiddle with price and things, so it was to all of our detriment in that respect, but I like the idea behind a more like a 10 mil size, 10, 12 mil, I think is a good kind of size for paint with how much use, unless you're using, a lacquer, which is already pre-diluted then I think 30mm is a good size. Okay, so that's that. Just skipping ahead to look at how all of these things go together. Okay. I like the way it has an escape ladder actually included inside the wheel bay. R or N? R is pale blue. Really? Okay. I think we'll stick with N, which is the olive green, which is really interior green. And then we have all of this bit. What I'm trying to look at is how the undercarriage go together. I think they were primarily aluminium. F, I bet, is aluminium. Well, natural steel, close enough. So it looks like these pieces G, 24 and 22, and 25 and 27. Those could all be our standard. I think doors, where are the doors on here? 28 to 29. Okay, they can all just be sprayed in a native state. That's fine. All right. There's some coffee. I believe Outlaw are still planning and still working on developing the brush paint variant. I mean, I have used this on a brush, you know, for doing small bits, and it works fine. Obviously, that's not the intent of the paint. Brush paint variant is like, oh, could you paint the whole piece like this? You know, which I wouldn't do, because again, part of the problem is the carrier solvent. Obviously, if you've got, can you imagine? Just like, I want to do this without pouring this all over the bench. Can you imagine brushing your model with this? You know, you could get away with it for one coat if you were quick, without getting any brush marks in the plastic. But that's kind of what you've got to think about, is that the solvents in something like this are maybe not quite that harsh, but they're in that kind of sphere, if you like. A couple of people talking about dry brushing. Yeah. Dry brushing is one of those things that is, I think, it's easy, right? It's really easy. But it's also really hard. So it's a bit like chess, you know, all those things. It's easy to understand what is intended and what to do. To achieve what you want to do with it is a little bit harder, and it does take getting used to. It does take some experience and just, you know, doing it to really get the knack, if you like, to know. And you can do a lot with dry brushing. So that dry brushing isn't just, you know, how you're thinking of dry brushing, of, you know, just a little bit of brush, paint on your brush, do it till it's almost dry, hence the name, and then putting it over just to get edges and stuff. You can do stippling, you can do mottling, you can do all kinds of things with dry brushing. We tend not to, but there are a couple of mini painters who are really good. Like, paint entire minis just using dry brushing. So with all of this, kind of getting to the point of, we should probably just put some paint on something. I think that's where we're at. So I am actually going to use a base of this far too dark medium green. And I'll show you why and how I generally go about airbrushing. So let's start off with a fuselage half. Outlaw paint doesn't need a lot of shaking. I don't have a lot of this. I hope I've got enough. The only thing I don't like about the Outlaw bottles, well, it's a couple of things. One is that seal, which is kind of, it is what it is, right? You need the seal. The other bit is because they're tall, they're really easy to knock over. Okay. That's better. I just had a bit of residue left in my brush. Can you see that yet? So I'm using quite a low PSI with this brush. There we go. That's the compressor kicking in. So hopefully, as you can tell, it's actually quite a subtle compressor. Unlike the one I have outside, which is like the world is ending. So the intent here is not to create a really dense coat. Yes, you can probably tell. So really just misting this on at this point. Just go ahead and I know I haven't cleaned up any of this yet. I'm not even sure that is supposed to be interior green, so. So effectively, I am using this a bit like a primer. Kind of. So you see this is dry pretty much immediately. Now that is also a really good point, Powell, is if you look at miniature painters, so if you look at somebody like Squidmar, you'll often see they have a humidifier going whilst they're painting, so it creates like a standard atmosphere around them, rather than just, you know, having whatever, especially if you're in a, you know, a heated building. Usually, I'm not really being careful here. It's pretty slapdash. It goes that way, doesn't it? Pablo, it's okay. Inside of this was done. I'm pretty much going to spray everything with this, all the interior part. This, however, is where this little beast comes in. Now we have got this nice little footrest at the bottom that we can use to hold that. So yeah, if you don't have a dehumidifier, sorry, a humidifier, you just keep like a bowl of water where you're painting, because that will naturally evaporate and, you know, give the air some moisture. If you live in a very, if you've got central heating, or if you live in a very, you know, hot climate or something, or very dry climate, you can do that. It just helps to standardize kind of the atmosphere where you are. Now, of course, if you're doing lacquers like this, you don't really want water in the air anyway, so don't do that with lacquers. Kind of the opposite effect. Pablo, stop it. Nothing to grumble at. I say that, of course, he always has something to grumble at. You're a barky boy, aren't you? That is all black, so I'm not going to bother with that. I can't remember whether these are black or not. I think they are. Yeah, I'll check. Yeah, Get off. I think this was also the same. So one thing as well with spraying that a lot of people get wrong is they spray too far away from things. So you should really, you can see I am a few centimeters at most away from what I'm spraying. The answer to that is yes. I reformat all of my paints into dropper bottles. So, yeah. Dropper bottles should be the default for everything, to be honest. In my humble opinion. Citadel are... okay, yes, 17 mils, I think, is the... I think you're right. Citadel are terrible for drying up. See, regular paint bottles, especially if you've got these, dropper bottles are fine because to return the paint, you just... So they do have the this little thing at the end, but you just take that off. That does come off. And then you have... It's a narrow neck, but then if you've got these, which I recommend anybody gets, pipettes, it's not an issue. Okay, I'm quite low on this. I'm not using much. I used, what, 1 mil there? I'm not exactly sure what's going to be visible. So. Don't think that is going to be too visible, but just for it. There we go. Running out of places to put things. Got most of that in there. Okay. What other bits do we have? This piece. We have this piece. This piece. Piece I did. There'll be bits I've forgotten and missed that I'll have to go back and do bits of. So the ICM paints only became recently available in individual paints. So I think there's only 1 or 2 places you can actually get them in the UK. Just going to make sure my tip isn't getting too dry here. For the individual paints. The thing is, as an independent, it's quite a commitment to get over a paint range because you need everything. And usually the minimum order quantity of a paint is 6. So for instance, to get all the Tamiya range, I have to get 6 of each. That's quite a lot of an investment because there's not much margin on these things. So yeah, any new paint range is a big commitment. Obviously, things like the Outlaw are a lot more of an investment because they are a lot more expensive. You know. Sorry. trying to paint and get everything on camera is challenging. Okay. That's roughly all of that. D, I don't think we need too much D apart from the inner. And the carriage bay door. I think that's everything on those. We've got wing billet inserts here. There's all aluminium inside of these. I don't think anything of that needs to be done. We do have inside of these. Okay. More or less. Okay. So you might think, great, Alex, you painted it all in the wrong color. Fantastic. Well done. Just have a little look at the chat here, because I've been just talking about the ICM paints. That's a fair point. As I say, that's why pipettes. Pipettes are the answer. Okay. So I also have zinc chromate green. So why didn't I just paint in zinc chromate green to start with? Well, that's because I never just do one color. So you see, I still have paint in my pot there, to which I'm going to add about 2 mils of zinc chromate. The one thing that I did forget to bring for this is the top, because I am a devil for spilling out of the airbrush cup. So the reason I generally put a darker color is it's kind of like pre-shading. So like for the shadows in something. Let's just back flush this actually, just to it just helps with mixing. as if you don't block the airbrush, which I may well have done just then. So if you ever find that you've dried your tip and you're actually not getting any paint through when you just do a backflush like that, what I do is, if I can find a brush, I know I have a bunch of brushes. Where did I put them? Where are my brushes? Where have I put them? Brushes, where are you? Okay, that is. There we go. So this is too small a brush, and it's also too good a brush to use for this, really. But get a brush, get some of your chosen airbrush thinner. Use this wonderful Man's Model Moment stuff. And then let's see if I can show this on camera. And then I actually just mooshing it around there with needle. You see, get all of your dried paint, and you're just dissolving it, making sure that you've not got a dry tip. You should just be able to spray again like that. Easy peasy. Yeah, so as I was saying, so generally, and this works for any colors, 3 colors really: a shade, a midtone, and a highlight will give you a much better impression of depth, an illusion of depth, than any single color. So I will tend to go, and I'm not going to go in here or back here with any of this, because that's where the shadows are, so that's where the darker color stays. Coming with the midtone on this, the only thing is I need to work out which bits I've done and which bits I haven't. So I'm just going to shift everything across to here, this big pile, so that I can move stuff over to this side once it's been done. Internal bits I'm not going to worry too much. So this is just building up an effect, building up some depth. It's the easiest, fastest way of achieving this. You know, I am a lazy model in many respects, because this is the double. Okay, see, I'm spraying much broader. I tend to spray down, so the shadows tend to remain at the bottom. You get the mid and the higher tones at the top, where the light is naturally going. Just gives you some variation in tone. And I'm not being careful about this at all, because I want some irregularity in the tones. I want some differences. You know, that's because natural things are not uniform. You know, as we saw from that hideously weathered B-26 yesterday. You know, it's a really good example. Yes, I'm spraying up here, but I'm looking at where people are going to be looking from. So once again, it's all about creating the illusion rather than replicating exactly. And bear in mind as well, this is just the, you know, this is my base spray. So the things that I would spend a little bit more time on are things that are going to be the focal point. So with figure painting, for instance, you spend more time painting the face and the areas around the face than you do the feet, for instance, because people are going to be looking at the face and not the feet, unless they're strange. And you don't need their views anyway, right? If they're a foot fetish person, then no, just no. The thing I love about outlaw points is you can achieve this in such a small amount of time. You know, it really is ridiculously easy. It is cheating, really. You know, so it doesn't really matter to me, you know, if some of these bits aren't going to be interior green. You know, if I then find out, oh, actually that's aluminium, it's like, well, never mind. You know, this is so easy and requires so little paint, it doesn't matter. But hopefully you can see how, like this, I'm sure you can see it really in the camera here, but compared to this, just gives a better variation of color tones. Can't really see it too much from this one, but hopefully see it more on the next one once again with the highlight. So this works really well as well with other effects like washes and dry brushing. They all combine because we're all doing the same thing. They are all creating depth of color and fooling your eye into thinking that something is bigger or deeper or higher or more present, you know, bringing out detail, all those kind of things. It's also the kind of shading that I do, especially on AFVs on the outside, are really good for creating like sun-baked effects or that kind of differences in tone, the interest. And hopefully, I don't know again whether you can really tell. I'm not really getting the resolution even on the close-up. But again, just right here. So I'm spraying here, and I've got more of the paint at the top here, down at the bottom. It's subtle. You can't really. The thing with this is you shouldn't be able to tell too much, because that's when you start getting that very exaggerated style, where it becomes more stylistic. I mean, it's very much up to you, obviously, do what you like, but that's what I tend to do anyway. I'm definitely getting to the stage where I don't have my... So I realise I'm not finishing sentences. I'm not kind of thinking in my head. I haven't got my airbrush stand. I should have brought that. But that is what I'm attempting to do here, is create that variation in shade. You know, I'm playing with, I can do it in this one actually. You can see the differences between those two. Again, I don't think it's really coming across in the camera as it is there. Not really. Part of it is because I was quite slapdash with the first coat. You're still seeing some of the lightness from the grey, which is fine, but that's quite desaturated. Now, although I said you don't want to be too harsh with this, I'm generally harsher than this, or harsher with this step than I want in the final result, because what I do here is going to be further toned down by the washing and then brought back up with dry brushing, which I may or may not do depending on how I feel about this step. There's the other. There we go. The trick with this really is you need, I would say, at least 3, but don't feel that that is all you need to do. You can come in and do it multiple steps. I may do more here just to demonstrate it actually. It's a good question. Weathering pencils. Are they worth the time and cost? They don't have to be costly. That's the thing with weathering pencils. I sell individual weathering pencils for £1 each. You know, I would suggest you go with, you know, 1 or 2, get the feel of them, you know, use them for certain things. They're really good for certain things. You know, I wouldn't use them for everything. Where is my white? Okay. I wouldn't normally use a white here, but today I'm going to, because it's what I've got here. So I would typically use like a yellow green, or more yellow green than zinc chroma. But yeah, I mean, weathering pencils can create some really nice effects. I would start off slow with them. I think the temptation with weathering pencils is to try to do too much too quickly. But like with pastels, like with oils, they're another tool in our armory. And so absolutely I would give them a go. So let's see if I can show you kind of what I'm trying to move here. You see here, see how I'm kind of building very specific areas here, and I'm overdoing it deliberately to show you guys. You can see there. Brighten certain areas. So you are imitating where more light hits. Yeah. So that you are leaving areas in shadow. Yeah. Very much brighter here in the front because it's got a big glazed nose on it. I'm not going behind this little seat because that's going to be in shadow. So, you know, those are the kinds of effects that you can kind of simulate with this. Again, you know, these doors, no, can't see that. They're quite heavy on those doors, not so much on the cap area. So effectively, you can think of this. This is effectively doing the same kind of thing you're doing with dry brushing, but on a larger scale. Yeah, you're not capturing the edges, you're showing where light is hitting them all, which is what you're doing with dry brushing. You're just creating variations in shade and trying to make sure that, not make sure, but emphasize areas which are more in direct light and keep the dark shades in the areas that have more, you know, would receive less light. So again, panels like this, you know, doing it from an oblique angle will naturally shade them. We're also going to wash those, you know, to pull that contrast down in those areas. And then if you want, you can dry brush on top as well. It depends on what you want to achieve, you know, how stylistic, how artistic you want that effect to be versus how quote unquote realistic. So realism for modeling is really determined by what effect you want. You know, what do you want it to look like? But hopefully you can see that the difference between one where we've just done 2 shades here and one where you've got 3. Yeah. So you can see some variation in shade there. Here it's much more extreme. We're trying to do it so you don't see just the difference in the application because that's just gone on, obviously. But there, you know, taking that out, you can still see different shades. Yeah. It's subtle, and the larger the scale, the more subtle you have to be because you have more light working with you. Smaller scales, you can go more extreme because you don't have as much light, so you want to overemphasize, because otherwise it will get just lost. See? Hopefully all of that makes sense. I'm not just burbling. Again, also got to think about where your things are. So this is on the ceiling, so I'm not doing it down from here, because where it's actually going to get light is the ambient light bouncing around, so it's going to be the bottom of it is actually going to be more visible. You know, again, like this, it needs to be from down from the top here rather than from underneath, which is a little bit problematic because you have to hold it you know, something like that. And then reposition. Again, this is why it's nice to have the outlaw paints, which dry pretty much instantaneously. So it's all of these things working in concert, right, that create the effect that we want. So is it really that on the real thing it's more green at the bottom here? No. It's we are trying to simulate the effect of light when you're looking up into this. Where does the light hit more? It's going to hit more here than right down inside the Bombay, which is practically darkness. You know? Now, the other part of this is, of course, I'm just doing this from my own personal stylistic interpretation. I'm not actually looking at any reference material here. You know, I looked at those photos last night to get an idea of what colour things were, you know, to make my decisions on what I was going to do the interior. More of a zinc chromate interior. But I'm choosing just to do this as I wish, you know, rather than trying to recreate an actual photograph. Yeah, these pieces I'm using quite diffuse patches as well. I'm not going in as close as I did with those others. Yeah. So it's very oblique. Maybe that's not actually the right word. Again, just focusing around this top here, I'm not actually trying to get any of this down here. So a couple of things you can do with things like stringers here, you know, is go between them to, you know, create this sort of line effect. So you're sort of emphasizing the more dark paint, if you like, where the stringers are, where the shadows would naturally accumulate. So shading in reverse, effectively. This is one of the reasons that I prefer to get everything like assembled to this sort of point to start with, because if I'm having to go back and do this, this is quite difficult to get exactly the same, right? Not that that's always disadvantageous, because it's quite nice to have that variation. Like, for instance, I'm going to have to go back and put these little pieces in. I'm going to have to do those. And for these pieces, which are going to be between bulkheads and only visible through these, I'm not bothering. It's just like, it can just be green. You're not going to see it. You're going to get an impression of color, that's all. So these sorts of effects you can create in all sorts of different ways. I just think that this gives a lot of bang for your buck doing it with the airbrush, which is why some modelers think it's cheating because it's too easy. They don't really get, to be honest. See? Quite easy to knock this kind of effect up. We'll come back to the chat shortly. It's just going to see I need to look at what I'm doing. That's kind of important for this. I don't think a blindfold challenge would be particularly that good, right? I mean, possible, but I'm not sure that people would really want to see what come out of that. So they're two different things, right? Weathering pencils and weathering powders achieve different effects, or you can achieve different effects with them. So I am very much a believer in using multiple things, because weathering pencils, you can have more precise application, but you cannot get the effects that you can get, some of the effects that you can get with weathering powders. I love weathering powders for like smoke staining, for instance. Obviously I'm using them dry. So there we go. Okay, not too much. Oh, I got this, didn't I? Forgot that. Well, because that is going to be, I'll just try and get the right one here. Oops, right. If that is going to be deep down, I don't think we need to worry too much, because the actual amount of light getting there means that we're not really seeing very much of that anyway. So that's fine. And it was probably more zinc chromate primer, so rather than any interior green sprayed over the top. So at least that's what I'm going to say for mine. That's what happened. Plus, of course, we have to wash this. So that will achieve that result for us. Right, I think we are more or less there. More or less. Let's have some lemonade. Oh, and I do also have these two. Go with. So effectively, this is a bit like doing post shading, right? It's like the reverse of pre-shading. You could also achieve a similar but not identical effect doing exactly that. If you just primed all of this grey, mottled it, and then came back just misting over your desired colour, you would achieve some of the same colour variation, right? The advantage of doing this way is you can use different colours, so your colour saturation is better. So it looks generally, I think, a bit more natural, a bit more organic. But as always with these things, it's very much up to you. Some of those interior window things. There we go. Oof, gosh, we keep doing this to be high as a kite. You can also go back and repeat this, of course, because if you come back even with the same colour and do extra little bits, You're going to increase the amount of that lighter colour. And again, I'm really up close. I'm like a centimetre from what I'm brushing here. See, so I'm doing tiny little amount. It's like applying German scribble camouflage. Creating that little variation. Most of which will never be seen, but you know, that's the that's the joy of our hobby. Creating effects that nobody will ever see or notice. Okay. Just using up the rest of my paint, just bring some of these grey areas that I'm not exactly sure what you'd be able to see. So. Just in case. Oh, that's the other thing I could do. These are those little bits for the Bombay door. Where are the Bombay doors, actually? Those need doing. Bugger. Completely forgot about those. Yeah, these Bombay doors. Oh, and of course these fillets. I don't think that's anything of a tool, so we're going to do very roughly. Yep. Where are here we go. Here are the Bombay doors. So obviously we're going to have to, we shouldn't see much of that anyway, because of the way that the B-26 is Bombay doors, you know, like retract like this, kind of like they fold into each other. So you'll only be seeing the impression of the colour rather than anything else. So we hopefully can kind of get away with that. Right. Do a little bit of airbrush cleaning. There we go. Get rid of airbrush cleaner before I spill that and it becomes a disaster. More coffee. Alrighty. It is indeed, Little History, a beautiful day in the UK. Thanks for the invite, but rain and thunder and lightning. Although I do enjoy a good thunderstorm. I'm one of those people that really enjoys thunderstorms. I think they are invigorating. But I do like the kind of summer thunderstorms, you know, which are sort of the heat and the charge. I mean, obviously it's charge because it's electrical, but so we've got the basic kind of shading, you know, that's the base that I wanted to do on these. One of the reasons I didn't put these all together and then spray them like this is because it's actually much easier to do the wash on these and remove the wash when it's like this than, you know, when it's all together like, which I think, there you go, it's just the right side, like this. Look at that, I've got a little bit of, I think that's just actually the evaporation of the glue. So yeah, it's just easier to do that. So okay. So what I need to go back now to the instructions for is kind of picking out the areas, not so much on these, I think, but certainly in the main cockpit area and those bulkheads. You know, what are all the detail pieces? Which are the bits that need painting different colors? Obviously, it requires me to have the instructions that they are. So we go back to the beginning. Right. Okay, so this little thing is B. What is B? Black. Okay, that's good. So generally, I will talk in generals because there are always exceptions to the rule. I don't paint black things black. So ICM do a black. I'm not going to be using that. That's that chocolate I mentioned before. That is way too dark, right, for REF. Dark. So this rubber black is fantastic. And generally, I will use this sort of color, a rubber black, you know, a very dark gray. which is basically what a rubber black is. Yeah. For doing black, because if you go black, if you go to the blackest black for doing your blacks, using the word black a lot, you have nowhere to go contrast-wise. You can't have shade on a very deep black. So I don't do that. So let's get my detail brush. Let's get my paint palette. I'm just going to use a dry palette, not using a wet palette because I'm not doing any blends or anything. In fact, I don't think even need a palette. That's just going to get in the way. Hopefully you can see why I like these. Is straight from the bottle. They paint really nicely. Nice and smooth. Good pigment coverage. And they are not too thick. It is awkward to do this on camera though. Let's see. No, you can't actually see what I'm doing there. Now, if you can see that, I haven't been 100% exact with this. So this is the other thing, right? Is people often fuss far too much, especially with small detail parts like this, with where it's going to be, in getting it absolutely perfect. Whereas I have gone, to the edge here. I haven't done these little bits back here, inside there. One, because it's going to be extremely, I don't think you can actually see them, but also we're going to wash this, and the wash will naturally flow into that, and it'll be difficult to actually see the difference when we get there. So that was, so we want B is black. B for black, that's good. What else is B? Not seeing a lot of B here. No B there. Okay, saying the seat is black. Really? The console we know is black, but I'm going to spray that. The control console is black. Oh, that little thing at the back is black. This little thing that actually I haven't bothered to sand. Now, once again, I would recommend checking references on all this stuff, because sometimes manufacturers will compromise with things like paint stuff. And it may be, yeah, the majority of this is black, but it's also got, as here, it's got some like little feet that's standing on. Maybe that is part of the frame that was put in before this thing. So it's actually zinc chromate. And you've also got to think, how much of it am I actually going to see? Do I care? But you see, this is why I like ICM paint. It dries quite quickly. It is pretty high pigment density, so I don't think I'm going to have to go over this again. I've gone straight from the bottle, so that's kind of done everything I need it to. I'm guessing this is black, right? The gun sight B, yeah. But yeah, doing this in the rubber black means that when I can put a black wash on it, which will actually deepen the shadows in the recesses, so it'll actually produce some depth to the black rather than the black just looking, flat and unrealistic. That's the theory, at least. But because this has already been sprayed, even if it's just incidentally, it's kind of primed. So I'm pretty confident these acrylic paints, the water-based acrylic paints, aren't going to just peel and flake off. Which is obviously one of the reasons that I did that. What else have we got? This B. This thing here is B, apparently. Again, when I paint this, am I going to go all the way to the edge? No, because again, if there's a little bit, I would rather err on the side of caution and not quite paint to the edge and let the wash pick up that piece rather than go over and get it on the bulkhead, You've actually got a piece at the back here as well, so that's not too bad. So you can see here I haven't gone all the way there, but when I do the wash, that will fill that piece, so I'm not bothered. B and B, okay. So essentially this is black, but the top is G, whatever G is. And then on the fire extinguisher, the nozzle is black. And this piece is N. Can't remember what N was. Anyway, that's what we have there. We're done. N, I think, was it N the olive green? I think N was the olive green. Yes, N was the olive green. So B, or N. Okay. B or N, very easy to decide that. B, B, N, N, N. B. Okay. N. Damn it, it's that piece. H, B. Okay. So this piece here. This is in. Just that to dry on the brush. Okay. Okay. Let's look. We have B, B, L. What L is? We have here N, N, P or F, N, H, just gunmetal, and B, B, B. Okay, there's a bunch of B's on the other side. Thanks. All right. So, quickly check on this piece of the cockpit and this cockpit side, just to make sure we've got all the B pieces. Yeah, does not show anything there. And this side, basically all of these pieces are black. Then we've got some decals as well for this, because this is radio equipment and dials and stuff, I think. A little bit more careful with the stuff right here because that is right up against the transparency. So got a little mind as to what is visible, or what is more visible, if you like. Okay. Now, this here, get that out of the way. This panel here, I don't necessarily think that all of these things are represented here by green. So, call it my doubting nature. So I just rinsing my brush. In the messiest way possible. So let's go to our new tab. And let us have a look and see what we can find for B-26 cockpit. Not B2 cockpit, because there's only about one photo of that ever. Okay. So here we can see that B-26 cockpit has actually a lot of different colors on these little modules. Let's just do a side by side here. Oh, no, that's not what I need to do. What screen can I do? Okay. This one. So as you can see on that, these pieces here on the side are black and there's grey. Same for this side, which you can't see because the I'm not sure how to get some of these, but these pieces up here, those were black. These pieces here, we saw black and grey. So again, I mean, it's not super critical, obviously, but if you're aiming for, you know, accuracy, inverted commas, or to make this look, you know, as nice as you want to, then look at this. Interesting, that does seem to be green. These seem to be like that natural metal or black. Sometimes it's difficult because there are sometimes post-war additions, but certainly this one here, which is kind of above this panel, that seems to be black. See, that one I was just indicating appears to be black. Look at the other side. This one. No, I don't want to do that. Thank you. again, this large one is black. This one appears to be either grey or natural metal. You can't actually see what that is in this angle. Do I have a more side view of the cockpit anywhere? Not seeing that much. No. In this one, looking back, can't really see much there. You can see like the back of the instruments. Interesting, there are no wires there, so that's always a good thing to see when people start adding wires when there aren't ones, you know. But this does appear to be like a grey or aluminium kind of colour. Pedals seem to be, in all these, seem to be just straight interior green. These look like just metal, like a flat aluminium. So this one was black. I need my sexy dogs. I don't know where I put them. Where have you put your sexy dogs, Alex? There. So I've just been using reading glasses, which are not enough for doing this painting. So again, I'm not trying to go all the way back, but I do want to catch the top lip of this, like so. There. Sorry, I do actually hold my breath when I'm doing something that small. And this side again, this one is black. Alrighty. I don't see anything on the other side of the cockpit particularly. It's very easy to pick out, other than obviously the silver boxes there. So leave that at that. I think we're good there. Now, the one sort of paints I'm not too convinced about in the ICM range are the metallics. I don't think they have the coverage. What I'll probably use for these is, to me, a flat aluminium. The other thing is, you've got these little document wallet kind of things. I'm not sure whether they're interior green or whether they're going to be something else, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for this. I think. What we do have, however, are some of these seats. And those seats, as I recall, were, I think it was L. I'm guessing it's something like leather. Oh, dark sea grey. Okay. Have we seen any evidence of that? Let's go for B-26 interior this time. That's a nice view. Look at all of that. So there's actually that view of those stations. That's a really nice view, like, of the two Brownings with these massive ammo belts coming down from the ceiling. There's our Bombay. Another view of those stations. Fortunately, you can't quite see those seats. Oh, there they are. I can't see what colour those are. They don't look like they're grey to me. They look more like they're khaki. Which would kind of make sense. Also, didn't realise that these are actually ammunition storage. That's amazing. So it actually goes up. This is an ammo bin of here. So this thing, where is it? This thing is an ammo bin. And these across the side here are ammo storage. These are ammo all the way. The things you learn, which I think is great when you're looking at these things and you find out all these weird bits about the aircraft. Okay, here are those. Okay, maybe they are grey, actually. This floor is actually just really thin ply, isn't it? Is that a signal gun? Those mounts, this time actually in interior green, and interior green for the floor there. So just said there's a lot of variability, I think, in these. Okay, so the seats were black with brown leather sort of side pieces there, I think. I'm not sure whether the yellow seat cushions are period accurate, but other people have represented it, so seems that maybe that is the case. Someone's done a great job on that one. I'm not going to be taking that. I don't care. Sorry, guys. Okay. So back to this. So I wasn't 100% sure about the seats yet, which is why I didn't paint them before looking there. It doesn't see, indeed, seem that they were black. The base. This is a smaller brush than I'd ideally like to be using here. Time is it? Oh God, it's almost 5 o'clock. Eating into my time. Okay. So that's that. Right, so let's get a brown, fairly dark brown. Chocolate, I think, is probably the one. Yeah, less of my tissue there. So I'm going to use this middle stone just to act as a kind of barrier here for this green and black before I do this in yellow. So brown works quite well as an undercoat for yellow. Browns usually have higher coverage power as well. This middle stone is quite a yellow. Ideally, I would put seat belts in. I think those almost always enhance aircraft's appearance. But we are limited and we're doing it out of box, so not this time. trying to get the spill there. Okay, good enough for an undercoat. I think actually I'm going to use this as well for those back seats. It looked like they were sort of grey with then like a cushion on them. This is a smaller brush than I would normally use for this, so I'm going to need another coat to take out the brush marks as well. But it's okay. I think I'll do the same on this. Yes, Pablo, I know you're still there. I can tell. Okay. So what I'm going to do for these aluminium like rails and stuff here is I'm going to go over it with Sky Grey to start with. Oh, that's where I forgot to trim them yesterday. That'll need seeing to. So this will just help in terms of the metallic coverage of these pieces. Again, I would rather be using a slightly larger brush, but as is what I have here at the time, we will use this at the time. Yes, Pablo, I can hear you. I haven't forgotten you. Okay. So it is painful to have to do this twice, because obviously I've got to go over the metallic, but I'd have to do that with the metallics anyway. If I didn't do it with this grey, I think I'd need to do it more than once with the metallic. So I would rather have double the pain than triple or more. You know, here I've got something which has a nice neutral tone, good pigment density. You know, the silver or flat aluminium will go over that quite nicely. Whereas if I just do the flat aluminium, I think I would need more than 2 coats. The other thing I could have done is gone with like a gunmetal, and then just sort of almost given a heavy dry brush, like wet brush of flat aluminium, just to bring it back. Okie dokie. That's all okay for that one. This one, of course, I have to actually trim those pieces that I forgot to yesterday. Yep. Let me just cover those pieces up there. All good. Okay. So, maybe I do those little boxes as well. Thinking about it. That serves you right. Yes. Choking on your own back. Pablo, hey, stop it. Stop. No. Okay. Right. Now, one of the things is I have to find where I put my Tamiya flat aluminium. But let's have a little look. Deep yellow. So what I'm going to do here, to start with, where's that middle stone I had but seconds ago? Here we go. I'm going to get my palette. If I can find where I just put that palette. There we go. It's going to take a good 2 scoops of yellow, 1 of the middle stone, because I'm not going to get the coverage with the yellow by itself straight over this middle stone. Hey, Pablo. This is quite a nice little seat, but if I think I was going for a kind of an all-out build, damn it, I've got so if you get paint or something like that, if you immediately go back in with a wet brush, effectively you can dilute it out. There you go. So correct your errors on the fly. So yeah, I think if I was going to go all out on this build, I think the seat is one of the areas I want to look at. How do I recreate this sort of life raft type cushion that Marauder had in a bit more detail. That's a much better perk though than barking. Rich Burnham, thank you. I hope it has been. I'm glad it's been instructive. That wasn't the intent of this, but I'm glad it's had an effect other than its original intent, which kind of there wasn't really an intent for it, but I'm glad it has been instructive, and thank you very much for your subscription. That is very much appreciated. So I think I'm going to give it a couple more minutes, and then I'm actually going to leave this part of the build, go and have a quick break. We'll come back to part 2, which will be the separate stream. As I mentioned before, just keeps things manageable on StreamYard, etc. Now, the question is, do I put a wash on some of this or not? I think I am inclined to actually do that. Let's see, what washes do I have here? That's a brown. And I think I have a black here. Yes. Okay. So, this is just a black oil wash. So just black oil paint together with an odorless thinner. So doing this is very, very easy because you literally just cover everything in this stuff. Everywhere you want to put your wash. So you can do pin washes, but I'm kind of just going to slap it on fairly liberally. So anywhere where I have an interface behind stuff, like on this piece here, any of these lines, let's look at that treatment. Anywhere you think shadow might end up, it's not going to look like this. Obviously, it's going to be wiped off, great majority of it, but just where I'm sticking it to start with. Also just putting a few random bits because it will stain even a little bit. That I still have to do some painting on, so I won't do that one. This one. I'm just going to give a good general overall globbing on this. Which other pieces do I want to do? I think maybe here in some of these, in the wheelbase. So you can be strategic or not with how you apply this wash. It's very much up to you, very much the effect you want to create. So I'm being quite liberal with where I throw it. The majority of this is going to get pulled off anyway. But the main areas I want are across the ribbing, the stringers. I think that's what they're called. And what that is going to do is basically, when we pull it off, what is going to remain is going to be mainly in those corners, in the recesses. That's going to give us that impression of shadows. So that'll work with the shading that we already did. And again, all we're trying to do is create the illusion of depth on something that actually doesn't have the depth that light would normally create the right shadows for. At the moment I'm just using straight black. Generally, I don't use straight black as a rule. For these sorts of things, I tend to use a mixture of black and brown. I find it creates a slightly warmer set of shadows, and also kind of does not only shadows but kind of dirt and grime all in one. It's a bit more useful, but I don't have a mixture to hand, so I'm just going to use the straight black. So in contrast, I tend to use black just for straight panel lining. So this is one I've just made myself. It's not so Tamiya panel line accent you can use. If you're going to use that, I would dilute it 50-50. I think it's too strong in its native form. Yep, I'm going to have a bathroom and mealtime break in about 10 minutes. You can also apply this in different ways. So I'm just slapping this straight on. I find the outlaw paints take these washes quite well. So they are resistant to, straight off enamel type of oil, kind of white spirit, petroleum based things. You don't need to put a clear coat or anything on. If we do put a clear coat on, there's a couple of effects. One, it protects the main pieces more, so prevents any staining. These tend not to stain as much. If you were using acrylics here, you'd have a different story. I wouldn't be doing this straight unless I wanted a very dirty look. But you'll see when we come to take this off, it comes off pretty well. without any sort of barrier on the outdoor paints. And same is true of, any lacquer based paint, really. Yeah. It's a 24-hour build. I'm not doing a 24-hour stream at Nunu because, one, people don't have 24 hours generally to watch. And it's difficult to kind of schedule unless it's a bank holiday, and I think people have better things to do. So it's 24 hours broken over 4 sessions, with today's session being broken into 3, basically for ease of management of the stream. So I'm cheating, basically. Where is the other wing? Oh, it's over there. Just losing parts of my build. Okay. Again, this isn't the ideal brush to use for this. We should really be using a much larger brush. I will get a larger brush from downstairs when we break in a minute. But just to show that you can make do with an awful lot in modeling that otherwise you would not do in the most ideal circumstances. One thing to note with stuff like this, though, is techniques like this can very easily highlight bits where you were lazy, like when I haven't removed this sink mark, for instance. So you just need to be aware of that. And obviously there are ways of working it so that it doesn't, which is what we'll do. cheat once more. The thing I need to do is all of these Bombay doors to try and get some, pull that zinc chromate down a bit. Also, as this is a homemade wash, it will tend to settle. So depending on how long you've been using it, it's worth stirring it or going down to the bottom like that, getting some of the good stuff. Also with a homemade wash, so I filter mine because I don't want great big globs of oil paint. I want fine particulates. So you can buy sieves which are like different, like 100, 200, 300 micron. Mesh sizes that let you, create this sort of wash without, as I say, getting great big globs of oil paint particles, which is the last thing you want in a wash, right? But also, it doesn't have to be just liquid. A lot of people think you have to have just completely dissolved paint, and that is not the case. Most of these sorts of washes are suspensions rather than pure pigment. Not always, but mostly. Okay, important question. Lancaster gun turret canopies, airbrush or hand paint? I would mask them and brush, spray them every time. Yeah, that's my answer. Yeah, if they're masked, definitely airbrush. If not, I mean, you can hand paint them. I've never really had too much success because no matter how steady your hand, it's difficult to create a completely straight line, right, at that scale. If I'm going to do hand painting, that sort of thing, I'll duck out and I'll use decal film. So I'll paint some decal film and then cut that into strips and use it, because that can be completely straight and saves you all of that. Unfortunately, Stephen, I am now going to end this one. Take a quick break. So the next stream is for the next link. I'll put that one up straight away with the Be Right Back piece, so that people will know that that's what's happening. And then we'll commence again at 6. So thank you very much for those of you who have stuck with me for the last 3 hours and 45 minutes. Give this stuff some time to, I mean, this won't be dry, but it will start to dry. I can get some larger paintbrushes, find my Tamiya flat, and throw something down my throat. Okay, so thanks, guys. See you shortly.